Welcome into the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt joined by Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, great defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina and now an integral part of the Pirate Radio Network. East Carolina hits the road this week to take on Florida Atlantic. And Kevin coming off a 13-10 loss at home against Tulane. The Green Wave now ranked number 23 in the college football playoff poll. It really speaks to the parity in the American when you have a league leader like the Green Wave, and East Carolina currently 0-5 in league play, and they play a one-possession game. It was close. East Carolina had the ball in the fourth quarter, opportunity to take the lead, and the offensive struggles, we're familiar with those. The defensive performance characterized by Saturday. We've seen that as well. So share your thoughts on the matchup with the Green Wave.
Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting one, Al, because, the Pirates came out, on fire. I mean, they drove the ball down and got points on their first two possessions. Honestly, they could have had two touchdowns. I think Alex Flynn missed Jalen Johnson in the end zone on the first drive. That would have been a touchdown. They just caught him out of the back of the end zone, so that they had to settle for a field goal. In the second drive, they were able to punch it in and get the score. They go up 10-0, and that's all in the first quarter, and then they never scored again. And it was baffling. Honestly, I don't understand why they couldn't get the offense going the rest of the game out. Of course, Tulane made some adjustments, and they were able to be better against the run and the pass and put some pressure on Alex Flynn, but there's no excuse for getting nothing going the rest of the game. Defensively, the Pirates have done what we've gotten used to them doing, with the exception of UTSA. They've pretty much been, holding teams to low point totals. Of course, the Michigan game is a bit of an outlier there, but most games they play in, specifically conference games, they've done their job and to hold teams, even when they give up some yards and, kind of with that bend but don't break offense or defense rather, they've still been able to keep teams in a manageable enough point range that the offense, if they could put anything up, they have winnable games. So it's been frustrating. We did see a better Rajah Harris on Saturday. I felt like he was, lighter on his feet. He made some nice moves in the hole and got some decent yards, but still nothing, nothing drastic, no 100-yard day or anything like that. But he looks pretty good. It's just it's hard to watch this offense not knowing, kind of when they're going to break out of it. Alex Flynn, he's doing the best that he can, but 4 TD passes to 7 interceptions is not going to get it done at any level. And it just doesn't seem like the Pirates have figured things out. So offensively, once again, a struggle for them this past weekend.
Kevin, a big momentum swing at the close of the first half. It initially appeared that the time had run out with the Green Wave deep in ECU territory. Then a video review showed 1 second remaining in the half, and Tulane was able to kick a tying field goal. So instead of going into the locker room with a 10-7 lead and feeling good about a goal line stand, the game is tied up, and Tulane kind of snatches the momentum at the locker room break.
I really didn't understand that call. When we saw the replay, they didn't show the seconds up there, so you couldn't really tell. But the quarterback clearly scrambled around, and the play drug out, and the ball hit the receiver's hands, and he dropped it. A lot went on. It seemed like there'd be no reason for anyone to question whether 8 seconds went off the clock. I'm surprised they even checked that. I have to believe that the Tulane staff was in the referee's ear saying there's no way 8 seconds went off, no way 8 seconds went off, because it didn't seem like at the time there was any reason to even review that. It didn't seem odd, like the clock just kept going down after the ball hit the ground. It was bang, bang, if anything. So I was very taken aback by the fact that they put 1 second back on the clock. Luckily they only had time for a field goal, but that was still, it was questionable at best.
Kevin, another officiating situation, East Carolina's final possession, and they go for a 4th down. There's a pass to Chase Sowell toward the ECU sideline. Looked like there was some contact as he attempted to catch that ball. He wanted a pass interference call. And I think when you were playing, that would have been pass interference. I think the officials were much less tolerant of contact in your playing days than what you see now, because there's a lot of contact allowed and no flag. But your thoughts on that particular play?
In general, I'm okay with contact being allowed because it's gotten so hard to play the defensive back position. You can't touch receivers. You can't hit them high. You get in trouble if you hit, when they're defenseless. There's just lots of situations that make it tough to be a defensive back. So to be able to use your hands downfield, although by the rule, you shouldn't be able to, especially when the ball's in the air, I'm okay with them being more tolerant. I do think there was more use of the hands on that Sowell play than appropriate, and probably should have been flagged. But I do get that the last play of the game situations, you're probably not going to get that call. It happens in basketball all the time. On a kind of a last second, drive to the lane, you don't get a foul call, and so it's to be expected that there's probably going to be some extra, roughhousing, if you will, on the last play of the game. So you hate to get in that situation because referees, officials are told, don't decide the game. Don't be the reason that the game's decided one way or the other. Let the players decide the game. And so, I think that's one. Unless it was absolutely blatant, you weren't going to see that called.
Well, that took place with 7:17 left, and then Tulane was able to run out the clock. They converted 2 third downs and 1 fourth down, and East Carolina never got the ball back. So that was credit to the Green Wave for being able to maintain possession.
There's no doubt. And the Green Wave, they kind of imposed their will late in the game. They were able to run the ball, get first downs. I think they completed a couple passes as well, kind of late there in the final drive. There wasn't a whole lot East Carolina could do. I think they used their timeouts late, but it was too late by that point. But yeah, offensively, this is a Green Wave team that had a couple different running backs that were really good players, averaging good yardage, as well as a solid quarterback in Pratt that had proven himself over the last couple of years. And, this was a big get-back win for him after, suffering such a big loss the last time he came down to Ficklin Stadium. So, yeah, that last drive was impressive, and they were able to run the clock out on us.
Gerald Green had East Carolina's touchdown. East Carolina has some depth in that running back room.
Oh yeah, there's 5 guys, and Rajay Harris and Bond, Green, Gunn, and the transfer from Carolina, Edmonds. Yeah, so they, at any given time, any of those guys can go in and get the job done. I feel bad for them because they haven't had the passing game to open up that running game. They haven't necessarily had the blocking to be really successful. We watched Keaton Mitchell in the NFL this past Sunday have a great day, 138 yards rushing, and just I think he's up for Rookie of the Week by the NFL. And he was able to skirt through some of those smaller holes because he was so quick and fast. Some of these guys have that kind of ability, maybe not to the extent that Keaton did, as quick as he was. But you almost have to be, a speedster to be able to get through some of these holes because they just don't hold up very long. And that's just with the repositioning of the offensive line throughout the season, guys playing different positions, different guys coming in. We've rarely had the same 5 guys start a game and finish a game that started and finished the game before. So we have the running backs. I think they will be successful in years to come, those that will be coming back. But this year it's just tough because we have 0 passing game. And so the team, the defensive coordinators have no reason to believe that the Pirates will be successful through the air, and they crowd that box and they make it tough on the running backs.
Jalen Johnson, he's probably the best receiver. Josiah Hatfield might be in that picture as well, but Jalen has been performing more productively in the last couple of games.
Yeah, and actually in this Tulane game, they got him going early. I mean, he had a couple of nice plays. I think he only ended the game with 3 or 4 catches, but I think 2 or 3 of those came in the first quarter. And so they got him going. He was great in the UTSA game. So these last couple of games, he's really, really turned it on. And, we know what kind of talent he is. Coming over from Georgia a couple of years ago, it was kind of the Isaiah Winstead show last year. He was kind of the go-to guy, and Jalen Johnson had some injuries. And, this was supposed to be his team, his year. And unfortunately, he hadn't had the quarterback play or the offensive line play to help him be successful, but also on his own merit on his own downfall, he's dropped some passes. Early in this year, he's dropped some passes and just hasn't been as successful as he should have been. But you're right. Late in these last couple of games, he's come, he's been the Jalen Johnson that we've been expecting to see. He's been successful, been catching the football, and been getting yards after the catch. I think Sowell is another one that's played really, really well. Specifically during this time period that Jalen Johnson wasn't playing as well, he kind of stepped up and kind of became the number one receiver, which was, we were all impressed by. And then as you mentioned, Josiah Hatfield has had his moments as well. So, Jari Patterson's another one that, we expect good things from in the future. But they've not had a game where multiple guys have played really, really well, scored touchdowns, had lots of yards. And that's mostly on, the quarterbacks and the line play and maybe some play calling at times. Because I think the receivers do have the ability to make plays and put up yards and points. They just haven't been successful collectively this season.
Tulane is in contention for a New Year's Six bowl, and that's a $4 million payout that East Carolina would benefit from. And as you look at the Greenway, do you feel like they're equipped to go the remainder of the season, successfully defend their conference championship, and then compete like they did last year in the Cotton Bowl when they beat Southern California?
Well, if you remember back a couple of weeks ago before the UTSA game, the UTSA coach put out a bunch of mouse traps in the locker room to signify that this East Carolina game was a trap, was one of those trap games. And, you can look at our roster and look at our schedule and look at what we've done results-wise and say this is going to be an easy game, a pushover game, be lackadaisical and get beat. And the Pirates did come out and play very, very well. Obviously, UTSA pulled away late, but I think the same scenario happened this past weekend with Tulane. I think we were their trap game. I don't think they expected our defense to be as good as it was, and offensively for us to jump out to a 10-0 score on them. And so I'd like to say this was their wake-up call. And yes, I think they'll finish out the rest of the season unbeaten and go into that New Year's Six game. Who knows who they'll play or how they'll do. But yeah, I think we woke them up a little bit, and they've got the offense and defense to be able to finish this thing out strong. I do like the fact that, as you mentioned, the parity in the league, that East Carolina, as bad as we've been this year, schedule and results wise, we were able to play with the number one team in the conference and one of the top 25 teams in the country. And so that shows you we're not far. And honestly, I don't think we need much. I think we need a player or two in the secondary. I think we need a player on the defensive line to help pass rush with Chad Stevens, Jeremy Lewis, Deontay Johnson, help those guys out. And I think we need 2 to 3 offensive linemen, a receiver or 2, and a quarterback. That sounds like a lot, but we're talking, 7 or 8 players across the board to turn this thing around. I think the nucleus is there. They just need better play on the offensive line and a quarterback, a receiver maybe, and a couple other positions on defense. And I think this thing can turn around easily, can go from 2-10 to another bowl season next year if those things happen via the portal or through high school recruiting.
Well, Kevin, we got another opportunity at Florida Atlantic, and I believe East Carolina played there last year because of a situation at South Florida, and that field was unavailable, so they've got a little bit of familiarity with the facility. Florida Atlantic is they're kind of in the middle of the pack in the AAC, 3-2 in league play, and then they are 4-5 overall, and got a quarterback transfer from Central Michigan. I think they're favored by like 8 points against the Pirates, playing at home. And so part of that advantage is built in by the fact that they are on their home field. but certainly a winnable game as you look at this. And East Carolina continues to work with a idea of improving. And talk a little bit about this matchup with the Florida Atlantic Owls coming up Saturday at 4 p.m.
Yeah, they had a stretch earlier in the season where they lost 3 straight games. Clemson was one of those. I think Ohio was one of them. They've had their ups and downs. They also had some times where they putting up some big numbers. I think they scored 56 on South Florida. They like to run the ball, led by McCammon, who's got like 75 yards per game rushing. Their top 4 backs all average about 5 yards a carry or more. And then you talked about Richardson, the quarterback. He's been okay. He's not been great. They've played at least one other quarterback this year, but Richardson's been the guy. He's started and played in 8 games, and he's averaging just under 200 yards passing. He's got 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Those aren't stellar numbers, but he is fairly accurate. He's completed more than 62% of his passes. So he's a guy that you have to be concerned about because he can make plays. I think last week in the UAB game, they got down 35-14, and they came storming back and ended up tying that game up 35-all, and then eventually lost 45-42. And Richardson in that game had 293 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And so he's proven that he can get the job done at times, but he'll also turn it over. So we'll get into my keys later, but I think this is one of those games where it is a winnable game. It's on the road. I don't know how tough the environment will be. I don't think they sell out there. They haven't played in front of huge crowds at home. Maybe anywhere from 15,000, maybe 20,000 on the high end. And so I don't think the environment will be too big for the Pirates. They certainly played in bigger. If they come out and play like they played the first quarter of the Tulane game, I think this is a very winnable game. But certainly, FAU still has stuff to play for. They're 3-2 in the conference, so down the stretch they could find their way to be in the mix of a bowl berth or competing for conference titles. And things kind of fell their way if they won out and people lost some games. So certainly a formidable opponent.
Well, also among the threats for the Owls, receiver LaJonte Wester. He's got over 1,000 yards receiving this year, 8 touchdowns. So I'm sure that the Pirates will have to game plan in terms of handling him.
Yeah, I think he's got 87 catches, something like that. Quite a few touchdowns as well, averaging over 100 yards a game receiving. So yeah, anytime you have a guy who's has significantly more stats than anyone else on the roster, you have to pay some special attention to him. So expect to see the Pirates maybe roll his way, maybe roll up a corner and put him in press and have a safety playing over top. Anytime he's coming across the middle of the field, expect to have linebackers bumping him and shoving him and getting him off his routes. But yeah, he's certainly one that you have to be concerned about. His yards per catch are up there. And so he's a guy that can run and catches the football with his hands. And he's a big, strong player with his hands in terms of getting open. So Western certainly one to be concerned about.
Kevin, as the schedule sets up for the remainder of the year, the trip to Florida Atlantic, and the Pirates are not prohibitive underdogs by any means. And then you've got a trip to Navy, and Navy is not having a season by the standards that they're used to enjoying. And then Tulsa, which is 1-4, 3-6 to end the season. Navy at this point is 3-5, and then they are 2-3 in the league. So the possibility for East Carolina to put something together at the end of the season and take some momentum out of what has been, a dismal performance to this point. But we can't overlook the improvement that has been shown in these games. They've come up as L's on the ledger, but 13-10 at Tulane, you make one or two plays, it's a different outcome.
Listen, 1-8, through 9 games is certainly disappointing. I'd still argue that if you just swap out one player and put Holt Naylor as a quarterback, I think that puts you at 4 or 5 wins right there. It's just the quarterback play has been so shaky, so up and down. it's made everything else worse. It's made offensive line play worse. It's not didn't done anything for the running backs. It's put the defense out on the field too long. Just a lot of things. And listen, Holt Naylor's had his issues too, so I'm not saying he would be the savior. It's just he was a lot more consistent, a lot more accurate, and made the right decisions more often than not. And so as I said before, I don't think the Pirates are far off. And so there's no doubt in my mind they could win these last 3 games. They've been a play or two from winning several games this year. They could win these last 3 games, and that would just give them a ton of momentum heading into the offseason. What that would do, Al, is it would help to maintain recruits that have committed already and keep them from decommitting. It would help to maintain players that are already on the roster to say, hey, look how we finished up. This thing's going to get turned around. We're going to get some help in the offseason. We'll be able to we'll pick up where we left off next year instead of going the opposite direction. And it will help get transfers to come here. All of a sudden, you finish the season with 4 wins instead of 1 win. It looks a lot better. And you can kind of show that, you're heading in the right direction. And this individual person that's you're trying to get can help you get over that hump and get you back in the bowl game. So I think they're all winnable. I think, I don't know how the Pirates will do, but I think that's kind of the message that you're going to get from Mike Houston to his players that, hey, we might not necessarily be playing for something big, but we are playing for our seniors, and we are playing to set ourselves up to be better next year. And we just got to go 1-0 each of these weeks, and that's what they're trying to get done.
Well, Kevin, as your coach Steve Logan used to say, losing creates problems and winning solves problems. And so we'll hopefully solve some problems over the last 3 weeks. Let's talk about that Bonesville tradition. Kevin's keys to the game.
Yeah, defensively, I think it's status quo. We've always talked about this the past few weeks, getting pressure on the quarterbacks. And I think we had a couple of sacks last week. We had 4 against UTSA. So I think that has picked up. Chad Stevens has been great. Jeremy Lewis has been really good. Deontay Johnson's getting pressure in the backfield. And that helps out the secondary. So I think you continue putting that pressure. Daniel Richardson, I think he may have some elusiveness to him, but he's not been successful. He's been sacked several times. He has negative net yardage rushing this year, so he's more of a pocket passer. So if we can get some pressure upfield on him and get in his face, we can cause him to make some turnovers. He has 8 interceptions already this year. So that's where we start, is getting pressure up front on the quarterback. And then offensively, they've got to get the passing game going. I don't even want to talk about the running game because I know the running game will be there if they open it up with some passing yards. And so they had a good start versus Tulane last week, but it fizzled out. They've got to continue to find receivers open and make the appropriate throws and get guys going in the passing game. So moving the chains, getting receivers open, making catches offensively is going to be a big deal. And then, special teams as well. You can't have mistakes in games like this. You're playing on the road against an opponent that you're probably equal with. They're probably a little bit better, but it's somebody that you can play with. You've got to make your field goals. You can't get any kicks or punts blocked. And you got to be successful covering the football. There was a big return in the Tulane game where the returner got the ball out to midfield and they went on to score. You can't have things like that happen. You've got to be stout in the coverage game in games like this if you want to win on the road.
All right, 4:00 kickoff at Florida Atlantic. And Kevin, as always, enjoyed visiting with you on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast, and we'll look forward to doing it again next week.
Appreciate it, Al.